This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
At Pepe Sayer, we focus on quality. So if someone comes into your restaurant and they see you're using Pepe Sayer, they know immediately that that is a quality product you've got in front of you on the table. And that comes from a decade of just doing quality butter day after day.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Darawal people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
We're innovators. We want to keep pushing, and I think it's important in the wine industry at the moment that you really keep doing that. So certainly for a company like ours, we work in that innovative space, so we've got to keep pushing.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh, Wale. Duncan Shouler is chief winemaker at Giesen Wines in the beautiful Marlborough region of New Zealand. Head of a large production of wine, Giesen is also leading the way in non-alcoholic wines. Duncan joins me today to tell me more about what he's been up to just across the ditch. Hi Duncan, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, it's a pleasure to be here. How are you?
I'm really well. Now that's not a typical New Zealand accent that I hear. It sounds like a bit of a mix.
Yeah, it is a bit of a mix. I've lived in New Zealand for just over 20 years, but I was born in England, spent some time growing up in Scotland and a little bit in Cyprus. And so here I am 20 years later, I've still got the English accent.
Ah, well, that's good to hear. And it's a little bit softer as well. So I feel like you've got a bit of influences from everywhere, which is always nice to have a bit of a mix. It creates a lot of interest, I think.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So where are you joining us from today? Where are you sitting?
Yeah, I am sitting at the winery here in Marlborough, and it's a beautiful day. We've had a bit of rain lately, and we've had a sort of lovely midwinter, almost floods, to be honest. And finally, the sun has come out. It's a gorgeous afternoon, not too hot, never gets too hot here in Marlborough, but beautiful day.
Yeah, I mean, you get so much sunshine hours, but like you said, it's always kind of a nice temperate climate. I was not prepared for how beautiful the sounds were as you fly into Marlborough. I thought it was just breathtaking, and I was kind of overwhelmed. So what an amazing part of the world to work in.
Oh no! Look, it absolutely is, and I think we're lucky in the wine industry that there are a few regions that are good wine regions that aren't stunningly beautiful at the same time and have a great climate. And Marlborough is certainly one of those. It's beautiful. It's probably not really regarded as a tourist destination, but it's got a lot on the doorstep. Fantastic natural beauty in the Marlborough Sounds, and obviously New Zealand's most important wine region. Yeah,
I mean, maybe that's a good thing that it's not such a tourist destination so that you can keep it to yourself. But a lot of people tend to have their kind of batch holiday places around the Sounds. Is that right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. No, it is. It's the Sounds is a lovely place. It's one of those sort of spots where you can just get away from it all, get out on a boat and stay at a batch that's only accessible by the water, and you're going to see dolphins and even penguins and do great fishing. So it's kind of one of those rare, untouched parts of the world, and I love it. I think I love the sort of almost the rusticity as well of Marlborough. It is obviously a world famous wine region, but it's still very unaffected. It's very real, and it's all about the produce, the wine, the food. It's great. I love that.
I think my aim in life is to meet somebody that has a batch holiday so that I could maybe occasionally be invited. So it's got to go right to the top of the list now after speaking with you.
Yeah, look, it's definitely on my list. I think owning a little piece of the Marlborough Sounds is definitely on the bucket list for me.
I can completely understand that. So tell me how you came to find your way into wine all the way from the UK.
Yeah, look, it was quite a roundabout trip. I suppose I was exposed to wine growing up, and I think I mentioned earlier I was very lucky when I was quite young that we lived in Cyprus for a few years, and I've got some great memories of we'd eat out probably 3 or 4 nights a week 'cause it was so cheap, and sitting in local tavernas, sometimes overlooking the water. Mum and Dad would always have a bottle or a carafe of the local village wine on the table, and they'd usually give me a small tiny sip just to taste it and have a smell of the wine, and I found it fascinating because you could see everything going on around around you. The vineyard was often just over the fence, and there'd be a donkey working in the vineyard, and you often see the fruit being picked. So I found it fascinating. And then sort of growing up, I just started to develop a really interest in wine, and I sort of was really interested in science, and the two sort of came together. When I left school, I actually studied marine biology and studied that in Glasgow, of all places, in Scotland. Great science university, but probably not famous for marine biology. And then I moved to New Zealand in 2000 and started teaching scuba diving in New Zealand. And at that point in time, the wine industry was really just getting going. It was really developing, and there were some very exciting wines coming out onto the market, and the industry was seeing a lot of success. So I sort of conned onto that and saw the opportunity and went back to university, studied wine, and went from there.
Fascinating. And what a place for you to kind of, have all the things that you love together in one place. When I read that you studied marine biology, I was like, oh, that's going to be such a distraction, because I'm fascinated with marine biology. And I thought, try not to ask him too much about that, and make sure you ask a bit about his day job. Do you get into the waters much over there these days?
Oh, look, I do. I probably not as much as I used to. We've got a 4.5-year-old now, so I have to say that I probably don't go diving as much as I used to pre children, but I still get out there when I can. And it's like I said, we're very lucky. You can drive for 30 minutes, jump in the water, and it's beautiful diving. Or if you want to catch lobster or abalone, paua, the New Zealand abalone, there's a lot of it here. So it's a fantastic place for it. A bit of a mecca for diving, really. And certainly I think when you fly over the Marlborough Sounds, if you're heading to Wellington, there's on more than one occasion I've seen some whales out in the Sounds from the air. So it's stunning.
Oh, I mean the water life and the aquatic life that you must have over there, other than that incredible produce that you can get. But what are the other kind of underwater attractions that you're kind of looking at? Is it kind of quite a rocky bottom in the Sounds, or is there a lot of kind of weed about?
Yeah, look, it's really diverse. You've got what's called the Kaikoura Coast, so down the coast of the the South Island, heading down towards the town of Kaikoura. You've got a beautiful, rugged, rocky coastline, and that was quite heavily impacted by the earthquake of 2016. But it's still absolutely stunning, and that's classic sort of rocky, almost sort of California coast style, where you've got a lot of sea life, very vibrant coastline. And in the Sounds itself, rocky shoreline, sandy bottom, but there's a lot of wrecks. There's a lot of shipwrecks out in the Marlborough Sounds. One in particular called the Mikhail Lermontov, which is a famous vessel that went down quite a few years ago now. It makes for an incredible dive.
Oh my gosh, I love wreck diving. Oh, well, that's another reason that I have to get over there and do some diving. I just have to brave some of the chilly waters and be prepared for a thicker suit than perhaps what I'm used to over here in Sydney. Tell me a little bit about your experience working throughout New Zealand, because you did work both in Marlborough and Central Otago, incredible winemaking regions. And how did you decide to settle in Marlborough, and how did you come to work at Giesen?
Yeah, look, it's I have sort of worked a bit throughout New Zealand, and I think that what I was probably doing early on in my career was I was sort of following Pinot Noir. I love Pinot Noir. I think like a lot of winemakers in cool climates, it is that great variety that can give you so much joy and so much heartache at the same time. And obviously in New Zealand, we're lucky that we can produce some fantastic Pinot Noir, but we've also got several very distinct Pinot Noir regions, Marlborough and Marlborough and Central Otago being three of them. So that was part of me really sort of hopefully developing skill to be able to create Pinot Noir in different shapes and forms and different styles and different regions throughout New Zealand. In terms of Marlborough, I came here, it was really opportunity. I think, sort of obviously commercially, Marlborough has been very, very successful since I joined the wine industry in sort of 2004. It's where a lot of the attention's been. But then with that, obviously with the success of Sauvignon Blanc, which has driven the industry here in New Zealand, I love that. I love Sauvignon Blanc. I love what it can provide consumers, especially at the price point. But I still had to be able to feed that little flame for Pinot Noir. I was watching Marlborough, and you could see that in places like the southern valleys of Marlborough, more and more Pinot was being planted in more appropriate soils and viticultural aspects. And so the Pinot Noir was just getting better and better and better. And it really excited me. So it was an opportunity to further my career, but also still try and craft some really lovely Pinots.
Oh, I don't blame you for following Pinot around the world, in fact. I think that's a pretty good plan. And Giesen makes some incredible Pinot Noir. The Claven sticks out of my brain because I think that is a Pinot Noir that I have been able to pick out of a lineup when I've tried it, because I think it's so site-specific and it's just so damn delicious. In fact, I did drink it on my wedding day, the 2014, and I was in seventh heaven. So tell me a bit about the offering of Pinot Noir, and how do you think Pinot Noir, especially Marlborough Pinot Noir, fits into the international market when you go out into the world to sell it?
Yeah, look, that's a really good point. I mean, I think when you look at a site like Claven, for us, in a way, we almost refer to Claven as its own region. It sort of almost transcends Marlborough. It's not really Marlborough anymore. It's such a special site, and there are several of those special sites in the region, but Claven probably is the preeminent one. Very unique soil profile, fantastic aspects, a little bit of altitude, close, high density plantings, a lot of different clonal material in Claven. So it has the potential to produce absolutely stunning wines. Marlborough and Pinot Noir still don't entirely go hand in hand, I think, in some areas, because traditionally a lot of Pinot Noir perhaps was planted in the wrong places and produced quite light, very easy to drink, but quite light Pinots that weren't necessarily regarded as very serious, compared certainly to Central Otago and Martinborough. But that's changing. I think we're seeing now that as people start to taste these new Pinots that are coming out, as we get more vine age, we plant in more appropriate areas. The wines have a wonderful structure, and they have the ability to age, which is fantastic. So I think that the opinion internationally is getting higher and higher of those wines, and they're certainly doing well on the international sort of show circuit and reviews and things as well. Yeah,
definitely they are. And I think also that there's now some really strong regions, throughout New Zealand, and you can kind of like siblings almost. There's the different spots that you go for the different styles, and I think the broad scope of how good the quality Pinot Noir is from everywhere really brings them all up. But yeah, these days you definitely see people in a restaurant ordering, I want Martinborough Pinot Noir, I want Otago, I want Marlborough, and they're quite distinctive in their choices, which is so good to see.
Oh, it is. It's great to see people really sort of start to understand those regions and even sub-regions. And look, that's what Pinot's all about, isn't it? It's about finding a wine that really expresses where it comes from. And they're almost two different varieties when you see a Claven Pinot versus a Felton Road or something. They're so different in style, but they both have great pinosity, and they're just different expressions of a great variety.
You are able to work with so many different ranges at Giesen, so spoiled for choice, I would say. You've got the Uncharted, you've got the Estate, now your No and Lows, your Organics, feature wines and single sites as well. What do you love about working with Giesen Wines?
Yeah, look, I think more than anything, it's the diversity that we have, and I think you sort of look at satisfaction with your work, and it's always really satisfying to create something like a Claven Pinot or a Claven Syrah that does really well in a wine show or gets a great score. That's fantastic, but it's also great satisfaction to see wines at the other end of the spectrum at a very different price point, really appealing to the consumer at that price point. That's really, really satisfying. And I suppose at Giesen, like you said, we've got everything in between as well. We've got a broad range. And then when you add the zero alcohols and the low alcohols on top of that as well, all of a sudden you've got another consumer that you can really appeal to as well, and a different occasion. So that's fantastic. And look, it's just stimulating as well, making wine in so many different ways. We're lucky we've got a lot of great people, and the Giesen brothers themselves are really inspiring to us all. So it's a great place to be.
Dad, tell me a little bit about the three Giesen brothers. It really sounds like a bit of a folklore tale, but Giesen is really important to the history of New Zealand wine production. So tell me a little bit about how Giesen got started.
Yeah, so initially it was the three brothers. So you've got Theo, Alex, and Marcel. And in 1979, Theo and Alex left Germany and decided to essentially start new life in the Southern Hemisphere, and actually flew to Australia first up. And famously, they landed in Australia, and within a few days, it was a 40-degree day. They were stinking hot. I think they were in Melbourne, and they jumped in the pool, and there was a great big snake in the pool. So they jumped out, and pretty quickly they said, let's try New Zealand. It's going to be a bit cooler and there's no snakes. So they did that, and they found themselves near Christchurch. And they were interested in wine. They weren't winemakers, but they were certainly interested in wine. They started looking at what was available in the local market and the local shops, the local bottle shops, and they just couldn't really find anything that was very inspiring. And they're looking around, sort of saying, "Well, look, this feels like a great wine region. Maybe we could make something." And lo and behold, they did, and they got in touch with their younger brother Marcel, who then studied winemaking and then came over to New Zealand, and they started Giesen Winery in the early 80s. Pretty quickly, they also started making some wine in Marlborough, and of course, it was great timing as well. The Marlborough scene with Sauvignon Blanc was really taking off, and they made some really fantastic examples, and the rest of it is just a fantastic success story.
Certainly has, and then grown, exponentially. I've actually met Theo and I think his wife, and been out on their boat at one stage, and my goodness, they certainly know how to host a bunch of sommeliers on their boat, and we had lots of amazing wines and a pretty amazing time, and they were absolute characters, and the hospitality and generosity shown by them, I think, is something I'll remember forever.
Oh no, brilliant! No, they are. I mean, they're all legends. Three very different brothers, but they're all brilliant at hosting in different ways. And Theo has always got a lot of great stories. He's just a great personality.
I love a good storyteller. So tell me about this non-alcoholic range. I really feel that New Zealand at the moment is leading the charge in that range. How did it come about that was something that you wanted to offer? And then where do you start with something like that in terms of not having a huge base of comparable kind of products?
Yeah, look, I think that point you made there is part of the motivation. There wasn't much choice, and it sort of came from a fitness challenge, or a health and wellbeing challenge, I should say, in 2019, at the start of 2019. And across the company, pretty much everybody signed up to this health and wellbeing challenge, and you had to track what you were eating and how many steps you'd done, and you couldn't drink alcohol. And the winemaking team, everybody signed up pretty quickly. And then we all sat down pretty quickly after that and realized that none of us could drink wine for a month. So this was, it was a bit of a shock horror moment. So we called an emergency meeting and sat around and discussed how we were going to do this without losing the challenge. And literally we said, well, look, can we look at zero alcohol wines? And we looked at what was available in the market, and there really wasn't very much. And we weren't, the wines were okay, but we weren't particularly inspired by them. So we literally just said, look, let's make one. Let's try and make one. The spinning cone technology was just available in New Zealand, and so we started some trials and had a bit of a play with Sauvignon Blanc, and we loved the trials. We put together a wine that we thought looked great. We showed it to a few other people in the business, and everyone said, look, this is something that could really work, and then we just went from there. So pretty quickly we saw there was a great opportunity. The market was really just getting going outside of New Zealand, and we just went full throttle. We bought the machine itself. We bought a spinning cone and started making, obviously, more Sauvignon Blanc, but then other varieties as well, Pinot Gris and red, Merlot, and Rosé. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's such an offering that you have now. I've had the Sauvignon Blanc and I haven't tried the others, but Sauvignon Blanc, I was amazed just how much it represented Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, a variety that if you released onto the market and it didn't have those qualities, you'd be pretty disappointed, but so vibrant. I just felt that it left you not wanting, not wishing for anything else, which is pretty hard, especially when you drink a fair bit of wine and you try lots. Some of the products I find just leave you thinking, oh, there's just something missing, whereas really found that wine didn't. It just gave you all the vibrancy and freshness and all those beautiful kind of tropical fruit flavors as well. But run me through a little bit about this spinning cone technology. And I feel that there's been a few different ways over the past centuries of removing alcohol. So why does the spinning cone change things?
Yeah, so I suppose one of the ways people used to remove alcohol was with reverse osmosis, which does work quite well, but it's very, very, very difficult, almost impossible with reverse osmosis to fully de-alkalize wine. And with spinning cone technology, what you're able to do is a couple of things. You basically, essentially the way it works is a form of vacuum distillation. So it is really just a still, but it's working under a vacuum, and the spinning cone part of it supplies you with a very, very large surface area, so you can really distill alcohol at very low temperatures, and that's obviously key, because at low temperatures you're not going to detrimentally impact the flavour of the wine. But it also allows you to do two things. It allows you to remove the alcohol, but before you do that, at really, really low temperatures, you can actually remove just about all of the aroma. So you can capture the aroma, and spinning cone technology is actually used in the perfume industry, where they do exactly that. They'll concentrate and capture distinct aromas. So you can take a Sauvignon Blanc and capture the aroma of the Sauvignon Blanc, put it to one side, and then you've basically got a base wine with pretty much no flavour or aroma, so the most neutral white wine you can think of. That goes back through the spinning cone at slightly higher temperature, and that removes all of the alcohol, and then you can blend some of the aroma back in to give you the characteristic of Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Gris or whatever it is you're making.
Wow, so fascinating. It almost sounds like this could be, is this used in, I don't know, is this used in kind of non-alcoholic spirits as well? Because it makes it sound like if you wanted to make a distilled product that's quite neutral, that would be another way to do it as well, almost.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't be traditionally how they do it, but we have done some trials ourselves, and we've had some pretty exciting results. So it's pretty fascinating. They use it in coffee as well. You can use it to extract coffee aroma out of coffee beans. So the technology's been around a lot, but in wine, obviously, it's relatively new. There are other ways of de-alkalizing as well, but for us, we've settled on spinning cone. We love the technology. I think we're really happy with the wine styles we're making, and I think that because we own the machine, we've actually got a sort of a crack team of operators who, that's all they do, is they run the spinning cone, and so they're really experienced with it now. And I feel like every time we make a new wine, we just get a little bit better at it. So for us, it's the way forward.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that I've really noticed in the last probably, past year, the quality of these kind of no and low products has really gone through the roof. And I think that's probably thanks to this new kind of technology, but also people getting more competitive and like you said, having more products to be able to compare them against and taste them. So we now have quite a few different wine judgings or non-alcoholic wine shows, and some of which you've won. I believe one over in the UK, was it, from the London?
Yeah, we won some awards at the IWSC, which was fantastic. That was great. The RA0 won there, and we also won at Wine Pilot as well. So we won some golds and some trophies there as well. So it's great to see those wines starting to be recognised.
Definitely. And it, like you said, it's so nice. It's almost impossible to judge zero alcohol wines against other wines. It does need to have its own category. And so it's great to see people like Angus Hewson from Wine Pilot, creating these great awards where you can all get together and taste them. And like I said, this is really adding to another product for a whole different consumer group. And who do you find are asking for these kind of products?
It's been really interesting. It's been a fascinating learning for us. I think when we sort of got into it, we assumed that it would be people who can't or don't drink alcohol for medical reasons or pregnancy, or decided to not drink alcohol. And certainly those do form a percentage of the consumers. But probably the biggest group is actually regular wine drinkers, people who still drink alcohol, but they've made the conscious decision to be a bit more mindful and reduce their alcohol intake, maybe a few nights a week, just have a de-alkalized beer or a zero alcohol wine. And that's what seems to be driving the category for us, which is actually quite cool. I quite like that, because it means that we've got the challenge is that we've got to produce a zero alcohol wine for people who the night before they might have had a really great full alcohol wine. So they are true wine enthusiasts, and I think that's where we've sort of maybe hit a bit of a button, is that we're sort of operating in that premium space, and hopefully delivering a really premium zero alcohol experience, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think it's really cool. And like I said, I think you guys are probably kind of waving the flag and leading the way and paving a path for others to follow. Duncan, tell me, is there a wine that you particularly look forward to making each year, or is there a wine that, piques your interest, you find difficult to make each year? What's that kind of standout for you that you really, tip your hat to?
Yeah, look, I'd probably have to go for Claven Syrah. And I know I've talked about Pinot, and I could easily say the Pinot as well, but Pinot is always difficult to make. Making good Syrah in Marlborough is extremely difficult. It's a really cool region. So we're talking about a variety that loves a little bit of warmth. Claven is a unique site, and we only have a small amount of Syrah there. But the exciting thing is you just don't know if you're going to be able to make it or not. So as you approach vintage, you're looking at the weather, you're looking at the vines every day. How are they reacting? Is it going to be warm enough? Have we got our crop level right? And then once you've picked the fruit, trying to nurse it through. So it's a really exciting wine, because I think it's one of those ones where you don't even know if you're going to be able to make something that's good enough to put in the bottle. And so it's a huge challenge. But when you get it right, it's a fantastic wine.
Yeah, and there's some really incredible Syrahs, within New Zealand as well that are distinctively New Zealand. I think, we've, especially in Australia, we've got, Shiraz vines coming out of our, bottom. But I really think, the some of the styles coming out of New Zealand, you just can't place them anywhere else in the world. And it's really exciting to see the Syrah from Marlborough, do just that. The Claven site is basically old vines, so 30-year-old vines, deep clay-rich soils. Are you still sourcing the grapes from that? I think that's how it started originally. Is that right?
It used to be, yeah, but we actually own the vineyard, so we've owned the vineyard for some time now. So that's been fantastic for us, because it's allowed us to then sort of manage the vineyard, and particularly all of us just get to know it really well. We spend a lot of time up there. It is only a very small amount of what we make, of course, really small production wines, but very important nonetheless. They really sort of, they're the halo wines of the company, so we spend a lot of time up there deciding how things are being grown and pruned and everything else. So we basically take all of the fruit, and a couple of other partners take a little bit too.
I was about to say, you've devastated the other people that were making wine from that site, but it's good to know it's in really good hands. I believe it's certified organic. Is that right? It
is, yeah, certified organic. That's a really important part of it as well. Is that, and it's just, I think, to be honest, you just get better fruit when it's in balance organically.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys are looking after it, and I look forward to seeing what else the site can do. But like you said, with some great sites, there's only so much of it that can go around, and you can only make so much at a time. So when it's released, you just got to get your hot little hands on it.
Yeah, no, that's right. And certainly something like the Syrah, I think, tiny production. We don't even produce it every year. And the Pinot and the Chardonnay. And look, I suppose that's when you talk about the sort of the fine wine end of the spectrum, that's those little things that make it so special. As often they are rare, they're hard to find. But when you get one, hopefully it's a great wine drinking experience, and it really takes you to where it comes from. It's got that expression of place.
Fantastic. And what's next for you in the next couple of years? What are you looking forward to, and what's the next challenge for you, other than keeping up with all your outdoor activities and kayaking and fishing and diving and raising a child as well? What else is next for you?
Yeah, gosh, I'm sure we get to school next year. That's scary. But no, look, there's a lot going on. We don't sort of we don't rest up and take it easy at Giesen. If we find we're having a success, we like to look at what we're doing and say, well, how do we get a bit more? How do we make the wine better? How do we sell a bit more of this? So we're innovators. We want to keep pushing, and I think it's important in the wine industry at the moment that you really keep doing that. So certainly for a company like ours, we work in that innovative space, so we've got to keep pushing. I think, like you said before, we are in a way leading the charge with the zero alcohol space, but we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to keep pushing that and make sure we stay ahead of the pack, I suppose. So there'll be some new products, I'm sure, coming out. Meanwhile, I think we want to still be regarded as a producer of some of the best wines in New Zealand. So keeping the Claven wines and the Ridge Block wines and the Uncharted wines really at the top of their game as well. So plenty for us to keep on top of.
Yeah, it sounds like there's absolutely no rest for the wicked, but it sounds like you work hard and you also know how to play hard as well at the same time. So it sounds like a good balance.
Yeah, no, it is a good balance. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? It's you can work really hard, but if you don't have that sort of playtime as well, it gets tricky.
Definitely. Duncan, if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, if you had to narrow it down to 3, what would they be and why?
Yeah, look, it's a really, really tricky question. And to be honest, it's 3 alcoholic beverage. I would have to have a beer of some sort in there. I can't imagine, certainly during summer, finishing a hard day of work, or during vintage, finishing a day of vintage and not being able to have a beer. So I'd certainly put like Pilsner in there. I love craft beer, but I find that the really hoppy, sort of high alcohol beers, you have one and then that's sort of enough. But a really lovely crisp Pilsner, whether it's sort of from Czech Republic or New Zealand or Australia, is great. And so there's something I could drink with my mates when I'm watching the rugby or after a hard day of work. That's got to be in there. And then I'd have to put Pinot Noir in. It's got to be there. It's such a wonderful, great variety. And I think probably specifically, I'd say Burgundy. It can be fantastic. It can be really disappointing. But whatever you get, you're always going to get some sort of emotional connection with the wine, good or bad. And hopefully that sense of place as well. Where did it come from? I think if you look at maps of Burgundy, I mean, I speak for myself and probably for you, if you're a wine geek, you can look at those maps for hours and they never get boring. So that, and then talking of sense of place, I'd also go with single malt whiskey, especially Islay malt. I think I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Scotland for a little while, and we used to go to Islay and Lewis and places on holiday every now and then. And I think when I smell a good Islay malt whiskey now, it actually takes me back to when you step off the ferry in Islay. You sort of get the smell of the salt air, of the seaweed on the beach, and people are burning peat in their homes instead of wood, so you get the smoky, peaty smell. And the great whiskies, that's what they smell like. I think for me, it's probably just about the best expression of terroir you can get. So that would have to be there as well for me. So if I had those 3, I'd pretty much be able to cover all my bases, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And interesting to hear that about Islay, because that's what you picture in your mind. And certainly you smell it from across the room when someone pours a good Islay whiskey. But it's interesting to hear you say that you step off the ferry and you feel that. It's kind of what I would always hope the experience is like. So I think that they're really good choices. And like you said, you've covered all your bases. You've got something to drink at whatever time of the day or whatever weather. And it's hard to disagree with you.
Yeah, no, it's a very difficult question, but there's plenty to choose from, isn't there? But hopefully that covers everything.
Definitely. Well, it's been so nice to talk to you, Duncan. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Marlborough. I hope I get to go and meet you in the flesh sometime and then pick your brains more about diving. I'll do that on my own time then, if that's okay. But thank you so much. I love the Giesen Wines, and I think you live in a slice of heaven. So I'm not surprised that that's where you ended up, considering all the things that you like to do.
No worries, Shanteh. Thanks so much. And we hope to see you over here sometime, and we can show you around Marlborough.
Sounds good. Cheers to you, Duncan.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram @overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.